Popular place, this one. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I've come out to one of my favourite places, which is a green lane, which is not too far away from my house. And I'm out on the big bike. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because I've been getting loads of questions and I want to kind of summarise everything that I've kind of learned. I'm going to try and do this in one video. It might be long. So for those of you who watch my videos regularly, you'll probably know that this is where my whole e-bike journey started, when I set out to build this thing. Before this, I was messing around with kind of the lower powered stuff on just normal, really bikes that probably shouldn't have that much power. But then I went to this. So this is basically a Chinese frame here. These frames are pretty common now. You're seeing lots of manufacturers kind of making these or copying these, but essentially it's known as an enduro e-bike frame. We sell them under the Kirby Bike brand. It's a tried and tested frame, and I think this is going to be kind of like a modern classic. Do you like the hole in my glove? That's probably something to do with an electric skateboard and the pavement. Anyway, so this frame's pretty flexible. You can actually put a motorcycle style seat on, like we've got here, or you can actually put a saddle on. If you put the saddle on, then you can put larger wheels on, you can actually kind of pedal it properly. At the moment it's a bit like a Super 73 because you can pedal it, but it's actually more comfortable if you're just kind of cruising around. But basically with the motorcycle seat on it, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. If you want to pedal it properly, then use the saddle bracket. It's very simple to change over. I change it over multiple times in a year, just undo the bolts on there and just whip it off and swap it over. So that way the bike can be used in lots of different things. If you want to rip round off road, stick the motorcycle seat on. If you want to actually pedal it and stuff like that, then you can just put the saddle on. Right guys, quick little interruption to the video. Just thought I'd let you know that I've actually got one of these frames in the UK right now. So if anyone's interested in putting one of these bikes together, it's one of the new ones as well, because it's got like the matte finish, that's just condensation. Yeah, so it's looking really good. So if you're interested in that, hit me up down below. My email address is down below. Don't do it in the comment section, guys, because it might get a bit crazy down there. So just email me directly and we can sort something out. Right, back to the video. So one of the cool things about this frame is it's got a proper swing arm. It actually uses a proper motorcycle style swing arm, and it is very, very wide as well, so you can fit big motors in there. So you can see here I've just got a normal 7-speed sprocket which actually fits in that gap there. You can actually convert these to a single speed, and that allows you a bigger area to actually put your motor in. There is also a wider swing arm still, so you can put one of these giant QS275 motors in there, which is just absolutely bonkers, but you do need a massive battery and a massive controller to do that. So this is a single speed setup. I haven't got a chain tensioner, mainly because this chain actually fitted perfectly, and I was pretty lucky. It's very rarely that that will happen, because the chances of breaking your chain and then trying to join it up and actually having it fit is very unlikely. But it was tight to start with, I will say that. Now it's actually stretched out a bit, but it's not too much of a problem because you're not pedaling hard on this. You're just basically using it just to, you know, keep your legs going around. And we've got a 42 tooth chain ring as well, which comes with the kit. What I've actually done with the bottom bracket, I don't know if you can see this, I've used a race face one from a fat bike, because I did have a problem with the bearings on the standard one just lasting about a month. This is one of the features I really like about this frame as well, is the fact that you can use a proper coil sprung suspension set up on here. You can actually change the position of this as well. It's got 3 holes and you can move it down or up to suit how high you actually want the bike to ride. At the moment I've got it set to the highest one, so I can bring the ride height right down. You know, if you're using the saddle, then you probably want to have it a little bit higher. But what tends to happen when you move the suspension down is you end up, the swing arm goes a little bit like that. So it looks a bit weird when you're not sitting on it. It's fine when you're on it, and it actually handles well. But it does change, you know, the geometry. So I've got race face cranks on here, some Shimano pedals. You want simple stuff on here, don't need anything kind of too fancy. So if we move over to the front of it, this is a bit that really sets it off nicely. The dual crown RockShox front shocks on there. These are actually coil sprung shocks, which I'd highly recommend. But the RockShox stuff tends to be a little bit expensive, and these particular ones are pretty hard to find because they're the older type. So that's why I now recommend the D&M USD forks. They're upside down forks, because you don't get this kind of stanchion across the top. You can actually, it's very flexible on what wheel sizes and stuff you want to put on there. So if we look at the rims are actually motorcycle rims, so they're 19-inch motorcycle rims. I forget the gauge on the spokes, but basically they're a really chunky gauge. It's laced onto a hub with a 20mm through axle, which you've got to use for this sort of front suspension setup. But these rims are incredibly strong, very wide, will handle like a 3-inch tyre on there, no problem at all. But you do really have to use motorcycle tyres, and that is a really, really good thing, because on something like this that's really light, I haven't had a puncture since I've had this. These tyres are the original tyres that I put on here and I've never had a puncture. Now the tyres I've got at the moment are Duro. They aren't great, guys. They're just basically like vintage sort of looking tyres. The compound's pretty hard, so they're useless for off-road, but actually on road they're pretty good. So I use them as like a dual kind of purpose tyre. And what I found is there are a limited number of tyres available for kind of 19-inch motorcycle rims, because you kind of have to buy a front dirt bike type setup and then put it on the back as well. But you can play around with different sizes if you want. And that's another thing about the rims. They are pretty difficult to get hold of. That's why we actually offer them in the store ready-made, so you can actually kind of order them directly. Because otherwise you've got to start lacing your own motor and your own hubs and stuff like that. And if you're not a kind of wheel expert, then you know the chances of getting a true wheel is probably really difficult. But whatever you want to do, if you want to put a different size on the front and a different size on the back, just contact us, let us know, we can build a wheel for you, it's no problem. And that includes putting bigger motors in the back as well, so you can really optimise this swing arm space. So coming around to the front, I'm going to cover all the electronic side of it later, but it's all standard stuff really, just normal downhill bars, a stem, a couple of spacers under there just to get it at the right height. Now the brakes I've been using, and you need damn good brakes on this sort of setup, these aren't amazing, but they were one of the first that were actually available with wires, so you can actually wire these up to your speed control to tell it to basically cut out when you push the brake levers. I've actually got this wired to brake lights, so you can see there when you squeeze the lever the brake light comes on. So that's a way of doing it. There is a way of actually having brake levers and your controller cutting out when you actually pull the brake levers in, or activating regen as well, regen braking. But I'll cover all of that a bit later on. And if you want to build a bike for the road and get it registered as a motorcycle properly, or a moped, you need brake levers with this gauge, because it actually shows you your oil level, which is one of the checks they do. Don't ask me why, but they do. So these are Tektro Dorado HDE 715s, but I think Magura would probably be a better option these days. And if you're not worried about having sensors, you want to use it off-road purely, then Hope, definitely go for Hope brakes. And because I did have the Hope calipers on here before, they were the Tech 3 4-piston ones. They're now on the other bike, the Vapor, but I've still got the Hope floating discs on the front. I think these are 203 or 205. They look awesome. They'll never warp because how thick they are, and they stop like you wouldn't believe, especially when you're running the proper Hope setup as well. On the rear, I don't think I actually ever changed this disc because it's not really used that much because of regen braking, but it does work. That's just a simple Avid disc, that one. And actually the Avid cable disc brakes are really good. They actually really stopped this bike really well when I had them on there in the first place. But then it probably wasn't going as fast as it is now. Right, so that's just the basic kind of rundown of the mechanical aspects of the bike. What I'm going to do now is go back to the workshop because it's freezing out here, and I can show you the electronics side. Okay, so back in the workshop. I can't tell you how good it is having a heated workshop, just especially in this cold as well. Like, you can just bring the bikes in here, even if they're a bit wet and a bit damp, they just like dry out, no problem at all. Got a little bit dirty on that last trip. These hub motors are actually okay in the wet. Most of them are actually sealed pretty well. I've never had any issues with that. You know, I've even been through like a small stream and this has actually been fine, like immersed up to about there. So this motor, guys, is a 5,000 watt motor. This is like an own brand one, but basically it's very similar to the QS Motors one. We sell the QS Motors one on the website, so you can go and check them out there. So this is the V3 motor with 3.5 turns and 38 windings, I think. And I recommend this one because it's just a good balance between RPM and torque. And for anyone that says hub motors haven't got any torque, you've not ridden one of these on a 19-inch rim with 72 volts and about 10 kilowatts. It's got plenty. Put it this way, when this bike runs about 14 kilowatts, I've had it going past 125s uphill at over 40 mile an hour. Anyway, to get all the lovely power out of that motor, you've got to have a speed controller, which is inside here. So I'm going to whip the side off and show you what's under there. Another great thing about these frames, you can just easily take the sides off, and they've got these extended bits on the outside so that you can actually fit more batteries in there. This is just carbon film that I've just put on some of these panels. It doesn't come like that. It's actually a shiny coating, but because I've done so much work to this, there's holes and stuff under here, so I just used the carbon film to just cover up all that. Right, so the sides off. This isn't 100% ideal the way I've got this configured in here, guys. Actually, if you buy the new version of this frame, there's a special area for the battery, so you can separate the battery from the rest of it. But in my case, it didn't come like that, so this is the original kind of build that I did. But it works fine. The only downside is you might get a bit of heat from the controller up to the battery, but that's what I'm going to say now. The controller does not get warm at 150 amps. So this is the Sabvaton 150 amps. This edge bit has been kind of filed off so that it will actually fit inside of the frame, because as standard they've got you know, a small little mounting kind of lip on there, so that has to be taken off, otherwise it won't fit in the frame that way. This is the controller of choice. It's an absolute beast. I've tried multiple controllers like Adaptos and the Infineons and all sorts of different controllers, and I've always come back to Savvaton because you just guarantee that when you turn it on, it's going to work and it will just carry on doing what it's supposed to do, and it doesn't get warm, which is the key. Ideally, you could mount this on the outside and have a protective cover. It's still going to get some sort of water ingress in there unless you really seal it up, but you know, this is how I've got it for now. This is relatively water resistant. Once the side panel is on, you can pretty much get a hose and just spray it down and no water makes it inside here. This controller is also Bluetooth programmable. You can do it with an app. That's the best way to set it up. You have to program this. There's no way around it, guys. You have to program it the first time you connect it to a motor because it has to do the Hall sense calibration. Otherwise, if you don't, you can ruin this controller very quickly. You're more likely to ruin the motor, to be honest, because it's not running efficiently and it will just burn up. Had quite a few customers do that despite being told that you have to program it, but there you go, that's the DIY e-bike aspect of it. So this controller has a screen on the handlebars, it has a switch on the handlebars as well. This controls the power profiles, turns it on and off, and does all that stuff. So if you fire it up, it does a nice little start-up routine. So it shows you your dashboard, the speed and the power output, which is quite good, and then your different profiles. If you set it to 0, the bike won't move. This is the twist throttle. This is not the best twist throttle I've used. I've got this on here because it works with the controller easily. It's just plug and play. But I'd recommend using a domino throttle because they're just a lot, much better. And you can change the grips on them, more like a motorcycle. There's also an updated version of this display as well, which despite what most people think, it is better than this one. Mainly because the earlier generation displays have a problem where, because the main voltage goes into from the battery to the actual display, there's a sensitive area, or component or something, that can actually blow if you have regen voltage going higher than the battery voltage, which you shouldn't do that anyway, but there's an issue there where if you don't configure things right with your regen voltages, then you can actually blow a display, and that's when you get a fault code on there. So that's something to be aware of. Whatever Savvaton controller you use, I would definitely make sure your regen doesn't come on until the battery voltage has come down maybe like a few volts or something like that. Even the Twizy that I drive does that. Like, it won't allow regen braking unless it's like below 95% of the battery state of charge. So that's that. Master breaker is on the side here. It was mounted on there, but I've just basically stuck it onto the side of the battery now. This is basically just an AC breaker. You can parallel these up to get more power. Actually, I find that around 8 kilowatts, this is fine. If you really gun it for a continuous amount of time, this will trip, and that's when you can actually put like multiple breakers in. The battery I'm running is the one that I built in my battery video. It's made of Li-Takala cells. It was a bit of an experiment, but it actually worked out pretty well. They're 5 amp hour cells. I've got 5 of them in parallel, and so that's going to give me 25 amp hours and 20 in series. So each one of these blocks is a 10S block, and then they're kind of linked together by these wires. That's to make it a bit easier for servicing and stuff like that. But that's a 25 amp hour pack, and that does me fine. And what's crazy about this battery is it will supply 100 amps, no problem at all. If I was going to build this battery again, what I'd use is the 30T cells, which I used on the Vapor build, because they are just insane. And if you did like 6 or 7 of those in parallel, that's going to be like a couple of 100 amps. So that's the sort of thing you need to be thinking of when you're building a bike like this, because it's endless what you can do. But for what this bike's used for, it's used for hammering away very quickly from, you know, accelerating very fast and then just kind of cruising. That battery is absolutely fine. So we've got a smart BMS in there. You can see all the balance wires going into that. That's available in the store as well. Brilliant BMS. It really does handle everything with the battery. You can just basically set and forget this and know that the battery is always going to be balanced, sorted itself out, won't overcharge, won't over discharge. This is a must. And it's all controlled by this tiny smartphone, which I've mounted on the top. I was going to do something a bit more permanent with this, maybe using another display, but then I found this little phone. It's a Jelly Pro something, but it's an amazing device because it's so small and it runs proper Android. So you can, you know, access all the BMS parameters in there. Done other videos about this, but basically if you go into this screen, you can see all of the cell voltages. You can initiate balancing. You can, you know, watch the charge going in. You know, you can measure your total amp hours. This shows you how many amp hours you've got left. So at the moment, you see the battery isn't that charged, 15.9 amp hours left. Tony Vortex has designed the app as well. If you don't subscribe to his channel, go and check him out as well, because he's designed and put a lot of work into this app, and it is just awesome. And you can see all the settings, which when you put your battery in, you can basically just go through all of that lot. There's so many parameters in here, guys. It's just mad. But as I say, it just means you'll be able to configure that BMS to the battery that you've got in there, and you should never have a problem. As long as you set the BMS to the right parameters for your battery, keep it safe, you should never have a problem. I've got 3 of these BMSs running at the moment on batteries live that I'm using for different bikes and also the trailer. One's managing that, so they can be used for power walls and all of that stuff as well. It's great stuff. The phone is being charged by the main battery as well, so that actually goes down to, where is it, that little thing in there, and that basically takes 12 volts, which I'll show you how I get 12 volts in a minute. That takes 12 volts down to 5 into micro USB, so you can charge that little phone. And this is the DC to DC converter. So this is the thing that effectively drops your pack voltage, big voltage, 74, 75, 80 volts when it's fully charged, down to 12 volts. And that 12 volts is distributed in here in this mess of wiring to the lights and also, you know, the charger for that. So we'll come on to lights. I'll show you what I've done here. Up the top, we've got switch set. So this is the main switch for the light. So this actually activates the lights. But if this isn't actually on this side, this is the light switch, then the main light won't come on. So you can turn the headlight on there. The headlight is actually, I think it's like a cafe racer style LED light, which is just, it looks lovely. It looks so good on this bike, I think. I've had really good comments about this this light. And it's got a main beam as well. And you get a blue light on there to show you've got main beam on. And to be honest, I ride around with the main beam on all the time because it isn't that much difference. It kind of just lights up a little bit further. It's not a proper, doesn't seem like a proper main beam, but it's pretty good. Wired through that same system is the tail light, which has also got like a number plate light. You can see it just down there, which I should really mask off. But that's just like an all-in-one light. This has got indicators as well. So the indicators are done by the normal stuff with a kind of motorcycle or car. You've got a little indicator relay there, which when you flick the indicator lights, you get the LEDs light up there. So this is all powered by the actual main battery again through the DC to DC converter. So it's like a proper motorcycle system. I mean, I did actually do this originally so that I could register the bike, but just haven't got around to doing that yet. We got a horn on there as well, which is just ridiculously loud when it's just hanging out the side there. The light mountings were just an Amazon special. This is like motorcycle stuff. It just kind of bolts on these front forks, no problem at all. Brake lights are wired up as well through the sensors. I think I already showed this. And that's just, you know, both of these levers work. What you could do is actually have one lever connected to the e-brakes for the controller. So when you pull one lever, you get regen, and then when you pull the other lever, the brake light lights up. But if you do it properly, I was going to actually just get a relay and then just run those switches through the relay and then have the relay activating the controller's regen and the lights at the same time, but on separate circuits, and I think that would be the way to have both working. Another thing on the handlebars was a little fan that I put in there, little PC fan which blows cold air over there. Probably doesn't really do that much, but that was something I put in. It was originally for the Adapto controller because it was just getting too damn hot, but as I say, this Saviton controller does not get hot at all. It's amazing. What else have I got in here? Oh yeah, I've got an alarm in here as well. This is a really low profile door alarm. I've got these all over the place. They're fantastic, and they're just armed and disarmed through this thing. Pretty loud. It's definitely worth using because all you got to do is just tap the bike and that will just go off, and it's just going to deter anyone if, you know, if the bike's unattended. And of course, when the frame's all back together, there's no way of grabbing that alarm and ripping it out because, you know, you can't get to it. So the other thing I'll quickly talk about, because you probably want to see how well this thing goes, is the charging system that I'm using. So this is just a Nutrix speak-on connector. They're used for speakers, pretty high voltage stuff. But they actually brought out a new one, which is called a PowerCon now, which I will probably change over, maybe if I do another build or something. But it's better for this sort of job. It's designed for kind of DC applications, but this one's really good, and you can actually get some pretty chunky connectors. There's 4 poles on this, so you can just pair up 2 for positive, 2 for negative on the other side. They're easy to connect. That looks really nice on the top. It's water resistant because it's got the cap, and it just does the job. That switch there is to turn the BMS on and off as well, so you can just click that once to turn the bike on, or reset Bluetooth to get that thing to come back. If you hold it down, if you've seen the other videos about the BMS, then you know, you'll see exactly how it all works. There's different presses for different kind of functions, but you can hold this down and it'll basically just shut everything down, which I won't do now. But this bike does actually need a charge, so I'll give it a charge and I can show you what I do. So for charging, I'm using a Chargery C10325. You can remember that. It's basically a 1500 watt charger. 1500 watt charger on the side there, and it will do any battery type. It's a great bit of kit, but it's also really heavy duty, and it just kicks out a hell of a lot of current if you need to. It comes with these like XT90 connectors, but then you can just make a little adapter up. That actually goes, I've got so many different batteries that I charge, so I've kind of got all these different pigtail adapters. So you plug that into there, and then you can see the speaker connector in there, which goes across to there, and that will charge it up. But you have to start the charger. But this won't start automatically at the moment because I haven't got it set that way. But so I set up LiPo 20S, and then we can put in, you know, you can go up to about 10 amps on these cells, no problem, but I'll stick it at about 8 and then we'll be good to go. All right, so that will just click, you do the relay click and then it just kicks in. So 8 amps is going in there, and you can see 8 amps going in there. So that will just charge that up. And it just looks the part as well. When that side cover's on it, it looks a lot better. The thing with this charger, it's not fanless like the cycle satiator, which I also use, but it has got fans in there, but it's pretty quiet. It will only just turn the fans on when it needs to. I think you can set that that level where you want that to come in. And I think you can set the temperature when the fans actually kick in as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's all charging, all good. If anything goes wrong or wonky, then that BMS would basically just cut that and then you won't have any issues. So it's a good, safe way to charge. Right, it's not fully charged, guys, but we can have a little run. Right, get those lights on. The thing about this bike, guys, it just feels so locked in. Everything about it just feels solid, and that's the difference. When you ride a kind of converted bike, like a mountain bike or something, yes, it's very, very light, and you are sort of getting a lot of power to weight ratio, but it's just something about this that makes it feel on the road, you know? It's not gonna do something unpredictable. I mean, there's every chance it probably could, but you know. So we've got a few different power levels. Number 3 is basically my go-to. I can just kind of cruise along 20-ish mile an hour, legs going round. That's still slower than some racing cyclists around here. You can let cars go past and then you can basically just match their speed. The mudguards do pretty well over the water and stuff. I'd advise getting the bigger mudguards rather than the, they do like a shorty one, which, yeah, I mean, it's not as good because it still covers, it still does actually cover the bottom part of the bike in dirt, but I'll just open that road again now. Got some power though. I do love this thing. The thing about hub drives is they're just so incredibly smooth, and there's very, very few kind of parts to go wrong. Whereas you have a drivetrain, or you know, with a mid drive like on the Vapor, you've got all of that. If you start pushing the power with that, yeah, you're gonna have problems. You know, things are gonna break. Which that's why hubs are super reliable. Although you've got the issue of the unsprung weight, I don't really think it's too much of a problem. I think if you are going to go for a massively heavy motor like a QS273 or something, you might have problems then. But, you know, it's probably only really going to be an issue off-road. On-road, yeah, I don't see that it would be that much of a problem, apart from you're going to get skipping back wheel when you go over, oh, look at the sunset. Yeah, you're going to get a skipping back wheel when you go over kind of potholes and things like that. That's the worst thing about having a load of weight on the back. But I like the way this bike handles. I think, as I say, I think this is going to end up being a modern classic, this design. I'm going to look back in years to come and say, do you remember those e-bikes, you know? Or because there's lots of people building these in lots of different ways. You know, we actually sell this kit as a kit, but you know, we're not the only ones doing it. It's not like an exclusive thing to us, but what we do, or what I do with the Kirby Bike brand, is make sure that all the bits that go together do actually do what they say, and you know that I've tried it and tested it. That's the other thing. It's always fun riding this bike. I still love it. I've had it years, probably three, nearly going on 4 years now, but it's just amazing. I've been through everything with this bike. In terms of, I've had it going up to like 14, 15, 16 kilowatts at some point. You know, trying to get it to go as fast as physically possible. But I think the sweet spot now is where it's at, and that's around 8 to 10 kilowatts. You don't need a lot more than that. You're going to come unstuck if you do. It's the smoothness that you get from a hub motor, and the torque is pretty breathtaking. So when I come off the throttle, the regen braking comes in. So you can see I've got 600 watts there, it's gone down to 500, 400, 300, and that just adds a bit of, it's just like engine braking really. It just adds a little bit of resistance on that back wheel, puts power back into the batteries as to slow you down. So you basically don't use any brake pads that way. But I love the feeling, like when you pull open the throttle, it just picks up speed. The battery's a little bit on the cold side, the voltage is dropping a little bit more than normal, but as I say, if I want to make it any better, I think I'm going to have to go to the Samsung 30T cells, definitely, on this one. So I know there's going to be a few out there saying, what's the top speed, what's the top speed? Well, this thing will top out about 55-60 mile an hour, but I'm not going to take the P, because that's not what you do. I'm just taking in the sunset, enjoying it. Don't it look lovely? So that's about it for this one, guys. It is an amazing bike. If you need help building one, give us a shout. We've got all the bits and pieces. We can help you work out what you want to do to make your ultimate version of that bike. It's just so worth doing. And you can actually learn so much in the process as well about electric powertrains and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, like, do all the usual stuff. I'll catch you in the next video.